Well, right now, world leaders are attending the second day of NATO's 75th anniversary summit, where they are being welcomed by President Joe Biden. The three-day event is being held in Washington. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy is meeting with Senators Schumer and McConnell in Washington. While Ukraine is not a member of NATO, as you are well aware, Zelenskyy is attending the summit, where he is requesting more support for his country. Later this afternoon, he will meet with House Speaker Mike Johnson.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us from the White House with more on this. You're following every twist and turn. Ed, I know earlier today, Secretary Blinken announced more military aid for Ukraine. Let's share a clip of that for our viewers first.
I'm also pleased to announce that as we speak, the transfer of F-16 jets is underway, coming from Denmark, coming from the Netherlands, and those jets will be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer to make sure that Ukraine can continue to effectively defend itself against the Russian aggression.
Ed, how important is that, given Zelensky's address yesterday saying the U.S. can't wait till November to take action?
Well, remember, he's been requesting that air power for more than a year from the United States and other NATO allies. So the fact that it's now arriving obviously will be a big help, but the Ukrainian military wanted it far sooner. In terms of what Zelenskyy is saying in terms of the need for aid, remember also in that speech last night, he said something that I think is on the minds of a lot of people here in Washington this week for the summit, and that is that the world is waiting until November. A lot is riding on what decision the United States makes in terms of who's going to be its president going forward, in terms of the future of the war in Ukraine, whether or not it will continue to get aid from the United States separate from NATO or as part of NATO. We've seen other world leaders here in town suggest much the same in recent days. So obviously it's a big focus of this summit. The president and President Zelenskyy set to have a meeting tomorrow ahead of a bigger meeting of NATO members who are making those kinds of direct either financial or military assistance packages available to Ukraine. And it remains a big concern, of course, for NATO because, as has been the case since the war began, there's a concern or belief that should he be able to somehow take over Ukraine, or at least big parts of it, he might not stop and head right into NATO.
And Ed, this summit is also the first international trip as Prime Minister for Keir Starmer of the UK. He's holding bilateral meetings with congressional leadership. We know that in terms of domestic policy, he's very different than his predecessor. But in terms of international relationships, do you expect anything will be different than it was with the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak?
So far, he hasn't signaled any big changes. If you go back to last week when he won, one of the first calls he made was here to the White House to talk to President Biden. But one of the other first calls he and members of his government were making were to Ukrainian officials to underscore that the British commitment to Ukraine would continue seamlessly. So in that regard, not much has changed at all. This is a chance for the new prime minister and the president to meet today. Traditionally, Democrats and the Labor Party are a little more aligned ideologically, so it conceivably means closer, warmer, more familiar and familial relations between the two governments in the coming months. But of course, a lot of that will depend on how long President Biden holds on to power. Notably, the British Prime Minister saying, even before he came here to the White House, that he's not going to be appointing a British ambassador to the United States until after the November elections. Like Zelenskyy says, they're waiting to see what exactly happens here before determining who from within his government or within British society should be the person representing them here in Washington.
And Ed, as you're speaking to us, we're looking at the pictures coming to us from Washington of President Biden there next to Jens Stoltenberg and other NATO leaders. I know that yesterday we spoke about the stakes here for President Biden at this summit. Are you getting a sense of how he is being received so far from allies amid all these concerns about his age and capability?
A lot of questions being asked about that among those visiting town. Perhaps it's the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's at least so far most publicly said he had no reason to be concerned about the president's preparations, saying that the preparations for this, the thinking about it, had been going on now for several weeks, if not months, and that he was confident the president would be able to carry this out. There is a lot of stagecraft always with these summits, no matter where they're being held, no matter who's playing host. It's all designed to show people back home in these member countries and to the rest of the world, especially Russia and China, that this is a strong alliance. But of course, the stagecraft matters a lot more to the president's personal political future in the coming weeks.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you.